Welcome to another edition of Hey Bobby with Senior VP of the Guardians, Bob DiBiasio. Takes time to join us each week here on WAKR Facebook page, YouTube channel, and of course at WAKR.net. Bobby, it was this date back in the 1930s, I should say this week, that they broke ground on Cleveland Stadium at that time. And of course, home for the Cleveland Indians all the way up until 1993. There was some good baseball. There was some bad baseball played in that ballpark. But you know what? I have fond memories of the first time walking through the upstart and looking at that green grass. And I know you had a chance to work at the old ballpark. A little reflection on Municipal Stadium.
Boy, it holds such a dear place in my heart, and obviously for many, many people of our generation, that was our ballpark, no matter how cavernous, how dark and gloomy it could be, and how it stayed cold till June, mid-June, because of the cement off the lake. But it was ours, and it was big, and um, anybody of our generation who grew up with black and white television, and the first time you walked into Cleveland Stadium to see the Cleveland Indians play, you saw the expansive, beautiful green field for the first time, just mesmerizing, and it made you fall in love with the game even more. Um, Lefty Grove faced Mel Harder July 31st, 1932, and in Philadelphia Athletics. And unfortunately, the Athletics won 1-0. Uh,
Oh,
Lefty Grove and Mel Harder dueling it out. We were so fortunate. Mel stayed in Cleveland, in Chardon, and when we closed down uh, Cleveland Stadium, October 3rd in 1993, we had Mel Harder throw the final pitch.
oh,
He was still around. He wore that uniform. We made up a uniform that he wore in 1932, and he stood on the mound and threw the final pitch of baseball at Cleveland Stadium in 93,
wow.
right before Bob Hope sang "Thanks for the Memories," in an incredible ceremony with the different players who played on that field, of course, at third base, shortstop, second, first. The outfield were in position, all the pitchers surrounding pitcher's mound. It was really one of the most remarkable days in our franchise history, I believe. And the things that just so many historic events happened at Cleveland Municipal Stadium.
Kenny Keltner had a big play in history there at that old ballpark. I remember the picnics in center field. No, the other thing, because we often talk about box seats, the one thing I remember about Municipal Stadium is you would walk in that lower bowl and you would actually walk in like a cement walkway, and then you would make your way to the quote box seat section where your seats were. Now that doesn't exist in today's world, but there was actually the reason it was called, right, Bobby? It was a box of seats.
Right. They had little railings around them so that you thought you had either some privacy or the fact that you were being treated to something special. And
Mm-hmm.
my father used to always kid me because my buddies and I, maybe 4 or 5 times, the summer of our junior year of high school, we thought it'd be fun to be a vendor at Cleveland Stadium. So we went down, and some days you wouldn't get picked to be a vendor. So you'd
Ah.
stand over by the commissary, and a guy named Jerry would sit there and pick people out. I'd always pick peanuts and sit in the box seats behind our dugout, watch the game, and sell maybe 20 bags of peanuts. And I was not very entrepreneurial in my life, I hate to say, where my other buddies, one had the pop, one had the hot dogs, and they would trail each other, and they'd come out with the nice hand, fistful of dollars, and not me. Um,
You
it,
came out with a fistful of memories from the
yeah,
baseball game.
exactly. A love for the game. You know, you talk about Frank Robinson's homer on opening day. You talked about Kenny Keltner. People forget that Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak was extended to 56 games, but that was at League Park.
Oh,
It
that's right.
extended at
Yeah.
League Park because that was
Yeah.
during the time when they were playing some games at League Park and then at Cleveland Stadium. And
Hmm.
the next day they played at Cleveland Stadium, and Ken Keltner made two really nice plays, as the story goes, to deny Joe DiMaggio a continuance of his 56 game hitting streak. Then I think he went on to hit in 11 or 12 more right after that, something like that.
Yeah.
So it was Kenny Keltner. Lenny Barker's perfect game, of course. Bob Feller threw a no-hitter um, at Cleveland Stadium. But that final weekend, our marketing department was genius. They sold the tickets in a three-pack. You couldn't one off it. So we had 74,000 people. Um, in that ballpark. It held four All-Star games. I think the four largest crowds in the history of All-Star games, all at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. Um, so yeah, some incredibly wonderful memories. Unfortunately, never in our lifetime or some of our lifetimes, postseason. Certainly in 48 and 54. I wasn't born until 55, but my mother says I was there because it was September and I was born in January, and they went to the game. So
I love it.
yeah,
Senior
so I
VP,
guess I was there.
Senior VP of our Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio, with us with Hey Bobby. Also, when you go back in history this week with the Cleveland Indians, closer Doug Jones set at that time a club record for consecutive saves. He was also born this week in history, and Doug certainly has his mark in Cleveland Indians history. Bobby, he was one of the good closers in team history, and I know you knew Doug pretty darn well.
I did. Sadly passed away due to complications of COVID a number of years ago. Um, 16 years in the big leagues. And here's a guy that uh, funniest guy you ever want to meet in your life. The driest sense of humor and wit. The thing I loved about Doug Jones, when his career was over, he spent 16 years in the big leagues, and he debuted at the age of 25, and then was sent to the minors because he wasn't getting the job done. That was in like 1982. And then in 83 and 84, he spent the whole time in AAA. He never made it back to the big leagues. And
Mm.
so he didn't get back to the big leagues till 85. And so he pitched until he was 43 years old.
Wow.
And could only throw a fastball in the mid 80s. And he was wallowing in the big leagues for a while. He had some success as a starter, then a reliever, and then they'd throw him in at the end of a game to save a game, which he ended up doing 303 saves, 12th most at that time when he retired in the history of baseball. Um, but seven different teams, seven with Cleveland, the most with anybody. So, he was a kid from Lebanon, Indiana, and always would love to talk sprint car. His father was a sprint car
Oh, okay.
driver.
Hmm.
That was his passion. Not a pro, but in Lebanon, Indiana, and back in those days, those were big races in different regions.
Yep. Yep.
And when he was eight, he always told the story. Who knows if it was true, but when he was 18 years old, his father then allowed him to get behind the wheel and do his own race. And he ended up crashing. Didn't hurt himself, but he ended up smashing, his father's sprint car. And that was it. He turned to baseball from that day forward, never got behind the wheel again. Um, but the cool thing about Doug Jones, I asked him one time, Ray, he had massive hands, and he could engulf a baseball. And I said, is throwing a changeup, which is what he was known for. Obviously the Class A's of the world, etc. You throw fastballs by people when you're a saves guy, ninth inning. You just want strikeouts. You don't want
Right.
traffic. You don't want, opportunities for guys to hit the ball. But Doug would always say, "Hey, those fastball guys can give up the home run." Um, and my job is to miss bats. And so as I wallowed through the minors or the majors, I ended up finding my changeup. And I asked him, "You had big hands, so is that a key to throwing a changeup?" He goes, "Oh no, anybody could, if they have the guts, could throw a changeup." He goes, "The key to being a changeup artist, and I know this will sound weird," he said, "you have to have a I don't care attitude. I don't care what happens after I let the ball leave my hand. Because if you do, in the one sense, it'll drive you to the nut house." You know, again,
Yeah.
we've talked before, being a closer is the hardest job in baseball. You come and your team's battled for how many hours, and one pitch could change the nature of the game, and you have to walk into a clubhouse that's all silent and go home and sleep on that and come back and be confident the next day. Hardest job in sports, and he threw a changeup to get it done in that 303 saves. When he retired from us, 129 saves, he was our all-time leader at that time. Now he's fourth.
Mhm. Doug Jones, one of I remember when I think of Cleveland Indians closers going way back, it was to me Dave LaRoche, Jim Kern, and then Doug Jones. Those are the three, right, Bobby, of that
Yes,
really got us going down that road.
absolutely. And um, Doug being complete. Not that Dave LaRoche was a fireballer. He was a guy who would mix it up, lefty, throw
Yeah.
some breaking balls and do all that sort of thing. Jim Kern, certainly the prototype closer with the monster fastball and then a breaking ball. And then Doug Jones comes along. It was so funny because he pitched for us when the movie Major League came out, and Charlie Sheen's character's called the Wild Thing. Well, our guys would make fun of Jonesy and called him the mild thing, which I always thought was just so awesome. Uh, so, um, but again, he pitched till he was 43 years old with a
Wow.
changeup.
Excellent.
Then became a coach for different high schools, colleges, and also the Diamondbacks and the Rockies in their minor leagues. But the coolest thing about him, I also thought, is he came back to us in 1998 for the guys who had to play at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, which has some romanticism. Each year were removed from that place. He got to play at Jacobs Field, and he got to be in a postseason. So
Yeah.
when we brought him back in '98, yeah, I remember his one appearance. It was an extended one. He pitched 3 innings, somewhere in there, against Boston in the postseason in '98, and got to, you know, go into a locker room that was major league quality, not Cleveland Municipal Stadium. Um, and so when that happened with our guys that spent most of their career at Cleveland Municipal Stadium, then we brought them back for a brief period that got to play at Jacobs Field. I always felt real good for them.
There you go. Senior VP with our Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio. We call it Hey Bobby here on WAKR. Bobby, as always, my friend, thanks for taking time to join us. Appreciate all the time, and we'll do it again next week.
Always fun, Ray. Take care of yourself. Go Guardians.